afternoon, everyone. My name is Vaibhav Patel. I'm a registered migration agent and a principal migration agent at Aussizz Group. I would like to welcome you all to the Migration and Education Conclave 2022, the biggest conclave in Australia with more than 35 topics that we are going to cover in over next 4 days or 5 days. First, let me thank you all for joining us today. This event is particular for the people who are planning and researching on various pathways to obtain a permanent residency in Australia. And also for those who are also looking for or already in process of applying for a permanent visa. All the conclave sessions are aimed to act as a board for a discussion where we would love questions from all of our participants, and we will also try our best to answer all of them during the session. At the end of each session, you will be given an opportunity to post your questions in the comment box, and we will answer them during the question and answer session. Hence, I recommend all of you to please try and gather your questions during the session and put them in the comment box during the Q&A session so that our representatives will be able to answer those questions. In case if your questions have not been answered during the session, then our team will try to get in touch with you later on after the session to help you out with your questions. Also, you can also visit our office across Australia and gather specific customized advice for your particular case. Now, before I move on to our topic, I would like to announce a giveaway that we have during this 5 days conclave. I'll share my screen so that you guys or everyone can see the giveaways. So we have giveaways. What you need to do to win the giveaways is shout out about the session in the link in the chat box by tagging Aussizz Group and Aussizz Conclave 2022 to win an exciting offers, which includes free 2 months PTE online coaching, free CCL online coaching, free 485 visa consultation, free 1 PR consultation, which is limited for 30 minutes, and up to 50% scholarships provided by institutions for selected courses upon meeting the eligibility criteria for that particular course. Now we will wait for a couple of minutes before we move on to our today's topic, just to wait for other people to join us, as I can see many people are still joining us. So we will take a minute or two to wait for them, and then we will start our session for today. Today's topic will be Australia's skilled visa programs, in which we will cover the visa options as well as the state nomination programs, planning level from the Department of Home Affairs, etc. All right, so let's move on to today's topic. Once again, I thank you all of you to join us today. Today's topic is an overview of Australia's skilled migration program. So we will be talking about numbers as well, including the planning level for 2022 and 2023. Now, there are total 160,000 visas, and out of which 70% accounts for skilled visa programs, which covers a lot of streams within it, which is employer-sponsored stream, skilled independent visas, state and territory nominated visas, regional visas, business and innovation and investment programs, global talent and distinguished talent visa. Now, if you see the planning level for 2021, 2022, so I have actually put in both for a comparison so that you can see the difference between both the financial years, which is the last financial year, 2021-22, where out of 160,000 visas, there were only 79,600 visas were allocated to skill visa programs. Whereas in 2022-23, the current financial year, the new financial year, this number has raised by almost 30,000, and now the program's total number is 109,900 visas. Now, for an employer sponsorship visa, it has increased from 22,000 to 30,000, which is 8,000 raise. Skilled independent visas from 65,000 to 16,652. That means that invitation for a subclass 189, I think, will increase as the department has increased the numbers by almost 10,000 or more. The next one is state and territory nominated. From 11,200 to it has gone up to 20,000. which again means that all the states will have more allocations for a nomination this year. And the regional visas, which includes 491 and 494, which is 11,200 to 25,000, which again means that the states will have increased allocation for a nomination for this year. Business and innovation and investment programs, that has gone down from 13,500 to 9,500. Global talent as well has gone down from 15,000 to 8,488, which is almost half of it. And distinguished talent visa, which has gone up from 200 to 300. Now for a family sponsorship, family visas, which will correspond to 30% of the program, and total numbers allocated is 50,000 for it. Now for family streams, we will still cover as it is part of the planning level. 72,300 to it has gone down to 40,500 for a partner visa. For a parent visa, it's a good news for Australian citizens and permanent residents who are actually waiting for their parents' visa, because the 1,500 allocation has gone up. So that means it has gone from 4,500 to 6,000, which means that the processing for a parent visa will speed up a little bit. And for other family categories, including remaining relative visa or a carer visa, it has still remained the same, which is 500. And total family visas would be 47,000 from 77,300 to 47,000. Now, going forward, skill visas, that is the current topic, today's topic. Now, as you see that the skill visa, skill independent visa 189, which is part of the skill visa. Skilled nominated visa subclass 190, which is a state nominated visa for a permanent residency. Skilled work regional provisional visa subclass 491, which is again a state nominated visa. And the last one is a 491 family sponsorship visa. Now, under the family sponsorship visa, you need to have a family member or a close relative who is an Australian citizen and living in a designated area. So we will understand each of this visa in detail now. And as I mentioned, that during the session, if you have a question, please feel free to keep it in your notes. And then during the Q&A session, you can ask those questions in the comment box. Now, subclass 189. So there is a minimum eligibility for each visa. So the minimum points you need is 65 in the skill select. Your age cannot be above 45. That means you must be under 45 years of age. You need to have at least competent English and a suitable skills assessment for your nominated occupation. Now, for this visa, your occupation must be on a medium and long-term skilled occupation list. If your occupation is on a short-term skilled occupation list, you do not qualify for this category. Once you have the minimum 65 points, a positive skills assessment, a competent English, and you meet the minimum eligibility criteria for a 189 visa, then you're required to lodge an EOI. As you can see on the right side, once you have a 65 points, your occupation is on a medium and long-term list, lodge an expression of interest. And then you have to wait for an invitation. Now, what happens is the department, every 3 months right now, as of current process, they conduct an invitation round where the department ranks candidates from higher ranking to lower ranking. That means candidates with higher points will be selected first in the particular occupation, and then they will go down to the lower points. Now, which occupation will be selected is decided by the department on each round separately. Now, if you receive an invitation, you just have to make sure that whatever points you claimed in your expression of interest, you are able to prove those points. Then you go ahead and lodge the visa application within 60 days of your invitation. And then you upload all your documents that are required and complete the health and character requirements and upload all the police checks and complete the medical examination. And then you wait for a visa to be finalized. And if that is granted, if you have claimed all the points and if you're able to prove all the points that you have claimed, then you will be granted a visa that is a permanent residency. And then once you qualify for a citizenship, if you choose to apply for a citizenship, you can apply for a citizenship. The next visa is a 491 family sponsorship visa. Now, the minimum eligibility criteria for this one also is 65 points. However, candidate needs their own points to be 50, and this relatives 15 points will be awarded to them in the EOI. So that means you only need your own points 50, and you will get 15 points from the relative because you're selecting this category. Again, the age limit is 45. That means you have to be younger than 45 years of age. You must have a competent English, which is IELTS 6 in each or equivalent score in other test. A skills assessment, you must have a positive skills assessment for your nominated occupation. And again, for this visa category as well, your occupation must be on a medium and long-term skilled occupation list. If your occupation is not on an MLTSSL list, then you do not qualify for this visa category. And you must be nominated by an eligible relative who could be your parent, child, siblings, like your brother or sister, first cousins, your uncle and aunt, your niece, nephews, or your grandparents. And your eligible relative must be a usual resident in a designated regional area of Australia. So they must be living anywhere except Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. If you talk in a normal language, what we say is a designated regional area is anything apart from these three big cities, which is Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Now, the process is quite similar to 189, where you lodge an expression of interest, then you wait for an invitation. Now, again, every 3 months, the Department of Home Affairs conducts an invitation round. Which occupation will be selected? Again, it's this department's discretion, so they decide on the invitation round that which occupations they will be selecting or which category of the fields they will be nominating. Now, again, same thing happens that all candidates are ranked based on the points, and the department will select people with higher points first and then go down to the lower ones. So even though the 65 points for 189 and 491 is a minimum eligibility criteria, you may not get an invitation at 65 points because there are many people with a higher points. So you'll always have to try and increase your points. So the higher is the better. Now, if you get an invitation during the invitation round, you get 60 days to lodge your visa application. You lodge your visa, and your 491 visa is finalized during the process once you complete the health examination and police checks and everything. Now, once you get the 491 visa, it's not a permanent visa, it's a provisional visa. So you get 5 years of visa. The visa condition is that you must live in a designated regional area. Then you have to live and work in a regional area of Australia for 3 years at least and earn 53,900 each year. And if you meet these requirements, 3 years after, you can apply for a 191 visa. Now, you're given 5 years visa. That does not mean, a lot of people misunderstand that 5 years plus 3 years. You get 5 years visa. Within that 5 years, you have to complete 3 years. They give you extra 2 years because in case, let's say, if you're not able to earn certain amount, which is 53,900 in this case, for a particular year, then you have an extra 2 years to meet those criteria. So that's why you need to live 3 years, work 3 years, and earn 53,900 each year for at least 3 years. And then you can apply for a subclass 191, and that's your permanent residency. And once you get 191, you can apply for a citizenship if you choose to apply for a citizenship and if you qualify for it. The next visa category is subclass 190. Minimum points again is 65. However, the candidate needs their own 60 points. The state gives them a 5 points. And age must be under 45. The English is same as the 189, which is a competent English. A skills assessment, which is a positive skills assessment for your nominated occupation. And you must be nominated by a state or territory government agency. Now, this is how you go for a state nomination application. You first identify a state, and then you meet that state's requirement, and then you apply for that state nomination for that particular state. Each state has a different process that we will understand in the next few minutes because we have covered all the state nomination programs as well in this session. So you apply for a state nomination, then you receive a state invite. So you invite and you receive an invitation in your skill select, and then you get 60 days to lodge your visa application. Then you lodge your visa application and your visa is finalized. That's your permanent residency. Now, this visa is actually a permanent visa. However, your commitment to that particular state who nominated you is that you will live and work in that particular state for at least 2 years. This is a commitment, not a condition of your visa. Next visa subclass is a 491, which is a state-sponsored visa. So the previous one, 491 has 2 categories actually, the family sponsorship and a state nomination. So now for a state sponsorship as well, you need minimum 65 points. The state gives you 15, so you need to have your own 50 points. So the 50 plus 15 becomes 65. Your age has to be 45 years or younger, you must have competent English and positive skills assessment, and you must be nominated by the state nomination of the government, state nomination authority. Now, meet the state nomination requirement. Again, you identify a state where you want to target. You move to that particular state, or if you can apply from your location, you apply from that location. Meet the state's criteria. Basically, you apply for a state nomination. If the state approves your nomination, then you receive an invitation in your skill select, which is an expression of interest, and then you get 60 days to lodge your visa. Once you lodge your visa, then you wait for the outcome. You complete your health and character requirement, which is completing the police checks and completing the medical examination. Once the visa is granted, you get a 5 years visa. Same as the previous one, 491. This is a provisional visa. It's not a permanent visa. Then you need to live and work 3 years in the regional area and earn minimum 53,900 for at least 3 years each year. And then you can apply for a 191 visa. And that 191 visa is your permanent residency. So once you get a 491, you actually lock in your 191 as long as you do these 3 things, which is living, working, and earning 53,900 for 3 years. It doesn't have to be continuous 3 years. It can be, let's say, year 1, you met the requirement, which is you earn the 53,900. Second year, you could not earn the amount. The third and fourth year, you met the criteria. You can still apply for a 191 visa after 4 years in that case. Now let's understand the state nomination criteria for each state. So before we move on to the state nomination criteria, I would like to bring to your notice that there is an allocation for each state as well. However, the Department of Home Affairs has not yet allocated or announced the allocation for the state nomination. So we will still see this is the 2021-22 financial year number, where Canberra has had 600 nominations for 190, NSW had 4,000, Victoria had 3,500, Queensland had 1,180, Northern Territory had 500, Western Australia had 2,100, and South Australia had 2,600, and Tasmania had 1,100. Total 15,580. Now for 491, ACT had 1,400 nomination, Victoria had 750, Queensland had 950, Northern Territory had 700, Western Australia had 1,090, South Australia had 3,330, and Tasmania had 2,200. Now, if you might notice that the visa allocation and the total numbers here varies from the comparison table that we saw before. That is, here it says 190 total had 15,580, whereas 491 had total 14,060 numbers compared to this table here. So what happened is the department had allocated only 11,200 seats. However, because some state ran out of their program well before the financial year ended, so a lot of states like South Australia, I remember that they had less allocations, but they went back to the government and they, I think, had increased their allocations by, I think, 1,000 numbers or so. So that's why the numbers varies in the planning level. Now, moving forward, each state, we will understand what is the criteria briefly. We will have a detailed topics on each state in our one of the 35 topics that we are going to cover during this conclave in this week. So this is a brief, but we will cover each state in detail by one of our migration agent in upcoming sessions. So the first one is New South Wales. New South Wales for a 190 nomination criteria. So this table is for your understanding. You can compare them as well. So 190, the New South Wales government requires you to have your occupation on NSW's 190 list. And then they rank candidates based on their points, work experience, and English. And then if you're selected from your EOI, so once you have your occupation on the list and if you have points, you lodge your EOI, wait for an invite from New South Wales first. If the New South Wales government invites you, you submit the documents that you have claimed the points for. And if they're satisfied, they will approve your nomination and give you a state nomination invite in your skill select. For a 491 in New South Wales, the requirement is there are 3 streams. Stream 1, which is where they say you must work 12 months in your nominated occupation in regional New South Wales. Or stream 2, if you have studied 2 years in a regional New South Wales within last 2 years. Or stream 3, which is you can, even if you're living in Sydney or anywhere else, like interstates as well, you can lodge an ROI in the given window. And if your occupation is on a stream 3 list and you meet the criteria, then you can lodge an ROI. If you're selected, again, you'll get an opportunity to submit all your documents to the relevant regional body. Once you submit the documents, if they approve your nomination, then you receive an invite in your skill select. And then once you receive an invite, you can proceed further and apply for your visa. Now, next state is Victoria. Currently, Victoria has not announced the new criteria. However, this is the criteria that we have seen in the last financial year. So currently, requirement is that you must be working in Victoria in a specific target sector. There are only target sectors that they are covering right now, and you need to lodge an EOI. And then they select you based on your points, your work experience, your your job or your occupation's critical demand in Victoria's labor market right now, and how you're helping in response to the COVID. So how your job is helping in response to the COVID situation. The same thing is for 491, except the one part that you must be living and working in a regional Victoria in a targeted specific sector. And you again have to lodge an EOI. And again, your selection is based on your points, your work experience, and how important your job is for Victoria's COVID-19 response. Right? So if your job's contribution is high, then your chances are higher to get an invite. Like let's say in last 12 months, we have seen that a lot of nurses have received an invitation. A lot of candidates in IT as well has received an invitation because their job was part of, like they were working for hospitals on their softwares. So that was part of their COVID-19 response. So that's why candidates in IT as well have got invitations and many other fields like this. Now, next one is Northern Territory. Northern Territory for 190, the requirement is that you must have studied in Northern Territory for 2 years on a student visa, and then you go on a 485 visa and work 6 months after your studies. And then you can apply for a 190 nomination with Northern Territory. Now, if you don't want to wait or you cannot apply for a 485 visa to obtain that full-time work rights, then you can go for a 491 in the second category, which is study 2 years in Northern Territory, and you don't have to be on a full-time. You don't have to go on a 485 visa and work 6 months. You can directly apply for a 491 nomination if you have studied 2 years in Northern Territory. That is the second category in a 491 section. And the first category is that you live 12 months and work 6 months full-time in your nominated occupation. That means you have to move to Northern Territory if you have not studied in Northern Territory. You have to live there 12 months, and out of 12 months, last 6 months, you must be working full-time in your nominated occupation. And then they have a separate application form that you have to fill in and upload all your documents with an evidence that you lived 2 years and worked 6 months full-time in your field. And if they are satisfied, they'll approve your nomination and send you an invitation in your skill select EOI. The next state is South Australia. Now, South Australia has a different requirement for each occupation. So South Australia has work experience requirement, some occupations for 190 as well. Some occupation might require 3 months of experience, 12 months of experience, 18 months of experience, or 24 months of experience. Now, each occupation has to be checked separately. There are exemptions for people working and living in outer regional South Australia. That means they're living outside Adelaide metropolitan area. Then they have a potential that even if they're not working in their occupation for a minimum period, they can apply for an ROI. And if they're selected, they can apply for a 190 or a 491, depending on which area they get invited in. Generally, most of the time you receive an invitation for a 491 only for an ROI. Lower work experience requirement for a South Australian graduates, which means that if you study 1 year in South Australia, at the same level for your occupation, that means if your occupation requires you to have a bachelor's level of qualification, then at least a bachelor level of qualification completed in South Australia, and minimum 50% or 1 year of course must be completed in South Australia. If you meet this criteria, you can also, and then there will be an additional work experience requirement. But let's say if for candidates who did not study in South Australia, the work experience requirement is 12 months, then there is a possibility that the people who studied in South Australia might only need to work 3 months in the nomination. Now, for a 491 in South Australia, again, they have a minimum work experience requirement for each nominated occupation. So you have to check your particular occupation, what is the requirement for that occupation. As of now, South Australia has not announced as long as I checked last. But generally, they have 6 months to 12 months of work experience requirement for candidates who did not study there. And also there is a huge exemptions that we have seen in the last 12 months. that South Australia has invited a lot of candidates who are working and living in outer South Australia, which is outer regional Australia, South Australia, outside Adelaide metropolitan area, and they're not working in their nominated occupation. They have still got an invitation through the ROI process. The next one is in South Australia, you have an option again that you can also apply for 491 nomination if you studied there in South Australia, if you're a South Australian graduate, and you might have a lower work experience requirement or leniency in the work experience requirement, depending on your occupation. You may apply for a 491, but obviously most of the time, because South Australia does not require you to work full time, people might go for a 190 if they have studied there. Now, the next state is Tasmania. For a 190 nomination, Tasmania requires you to study 2 years in Tasmania and then apply for a nomination. However, you might expect some changes in Tasmania's nomination criteria and the process. Because right now, so far, until the last financial year, you simply complete 2-year study and submit an online application with your documents. And if you're approved, then you get an invitation for 190. However, now they might be changing the process to an EOI system that we have in New South Wales or metric system in Canberra. Similarly, they might have some sort of metrics where you can apply for an EOI or a metrics points or something, and then be selected, and then they will invite you to apply for a nomination. So basically for 190, study 2 years in Tasmania, or if your occupation is on a TSOL, which is Tasmania Skilled Occupation List, then you must work 6 months full-time in your nominated occupation to qualify for a 190 nomination. Now for 491 in Tasmania, you have multiple options. Number one is study 1 year relevant to the priority area or industrial area that they have mentioned. So South Tasmania has a list of priority areas. If you study on those particular area for 1 year, you may get a nomination for a 491. Or you work 6 months full time in any skilled job, which is skill level 1 to 3, and you can still apply for a 491 nomination. Or number three, third option is work 3 months full time if your occupation is on TSOL. So if you don't have enough visa to work full time 6 months to qualify for 190, you can work 3 months full time in your nominated occupation, and your occupation has to be on the Tasmania Skilled Occupation List. Then you can get a 491 nomination. Or the last option is establish a new business and operate that business for 6 months and show that you can earn at least 53,900 per annum from that business, and you can also apply for a 491 nomination through the small business owner category. Now, there is no other requirement on the investment or the number of staff you have or the turnover. You should be able to just prove that this is a new business, not a franchisee, not an existing business purchased. It has to be established a new business, operated for 6 months, and show that in 6 months' time you have earned, let's say, for example, roughly $26,000 or $27,000. That comes to more than 53,900 per year. That means you will be able to earn the minimum requirement for 491 to 191. And there is no other requirement for a business category in Tasmania. Now, next one is Queensland. For a 190 nomination criteria, Queensland has an option that if you graduate from Queensland University in a PhD only, then you can apply for a 190 or 491 nomination. You must have completed the 100% course in Queensland, and you had a decision on your thesis and graduated in last 2 years, and no job required or no job offers required in that particular case. Now you can choose either you want to apply for a 190 or a 491, but obviously if you meet the criteria for a 190, you wouldn't go for a 491. Next option is if you are a skilled worker living in Queensland, you must work 6 months full time in your nominated occupation and lodge an EOI. And if you're selected, then you have to apply for a state nomination with Queensland. And that time you will need to provide an evidence that on top of meeting the 6 months full-time work experience requirement in your nominated occupation, your job is continuing and you have an offer from your employer for next at least 12 months. Or the third option is, which is at the moment closed, which is skilled worker living offshore. So if you are an offshore candidate, you still have to wait for Queensland to announce the new criteria and whether they are open for an offshore candidates or not. The 491 option for Queensland is there are 3 categories again, or 4 categories, but the 4th one is closed, which is a working skilled workers offshore. So we're not talking about that one. So there are 3 categories that are actively open right now, which is graduates of Queensland University. Now, people who have completed master's or bachelor, they can only qualify for a 491. You must have completed 100% of your study in Queensland Institute or University and have a GPA of 6.0 or higher. You must have a proficient English or higher, and you must have 3 months work experience, at least 20 hours per week after graduation in your nominated occupation, and your job must be continuing for further 12 months. Second option is skilled workers living in Queensland. So if you are a skilled worker living in Queensland, you must work 3 months full time in your nominated occupation and then lodge an EOI. And if you're selected, again, you will also need to prove that you have next 12 months, your employer is still likely to offer you a job for next 12 months. The third category is a small business owner category, where you have to purchase an existing business, unlike Tasmania, where you have to establish a new business. If you establish a new business, you have to run that business for 2 years, which is completely, a very long-term venture. So I would probably not suggest that unless you have been already running that business for 2 years. So you purchase an existing business for at least $100,000 or more in value and operate that business for 6 months, and you employ one Australian employee part-time, 20 hours per week. Now, if you apply under this small business owner category or any of this category, you have to lodge an expression of interest. Once you're selected, then you apply for a state nomination with Queensland. And if the Queensland approves, depending on 190 or 491, if you get an invite for 190, you lodge a 190 visa. If you get an invite for 491, you lodge a 491 visa within 60 days of your invite. And then once the visa is granted, you follow the conditions of your visa accordingly. The next state is Western Australia. In Western Australia, there are 2 streams again. There are actually 3 streams: graduate stream, general stream, schedule 1, and general stream, schedule 2. However, we are only covering 2 categories right now in this snapshot. But when we go for a detailed details on Western Australia specifically in one of our conclave session, we will cover all the available streams in the session. The graduate stream, you must have completed at least 2 years study in Western Australia and meet minimum English language requirement, which is for most of occupation is a proficient English. And you must have 12 months of full-time job offer in Western Australia in your nominated occupation, or you must have total 6 months of work experience anywhere in Australia. So either you have a job offer in Western Australia in your field, or you have 6 months of work experience anywhere in Australia in your nominated occupation. For stream 2 for 190 is your general, your occupation must be on a schedule 2, and you meet the English language requirement, and you're currently living in Australia, anywhere in Australia, doesn't have to be Western Australia, and you must have 12 months of job contract in Western Australia in your nominated occupation. Now, you don't have to move beforehand, but if you get invited and if you have a job offer, then you must start the job as per your job offer start date, because if you have a job offer from an employer in Western Australia, there would be a start date. So you need to start the job accordingly. But when you get invited, even if you're not living in Western Australia, you might be invited. And you are given 28 days to find a job and apply for a state nomination with Western Australia within that 20 days. The second category is 491 nomination, where graduate stream, again, is the same criteria, which is 2 years study in Western Australia, meet the English language requirement, have a job offer for 12 months, or 6 months full-time work experience in your nominated occupation. Or stream 2, which is a second category, which is general stream, again, the same criteria that you must be on a schedule 2, must meet the English language requirement, you're currently living in Australia, and you have a job offer in your field for at least 12 months. So there is no major difference in 190 and 491 category, depending on, but sometimes we have noticed that candidates who have chosen only 190, they have not got an invite, whereas candidates who have chosen 190 and 491, they have not got an invite in 190, but they've got an invite for 491. So if you're open to take a 491, you should choose both the streams. The next state is Canberra, where they have 2 categories again. One is working in Canberra, excuse me, working in Canberra, your occupation must be on an ACT's list, which is their occupation list, and have at least 6 months continuous work experience full time. And then you need to lodge in metrics. Now, this 6 months continuous requirement, that means you do not have any gap in this 6 months. So each week has to be 35 hours per week, unless you meet the exemption criteria, which is like you have a paid leave, or you had a medical leave, or it was a public holiday. And therefore you did not have the 35 hours in that particular week, then the continuous requirement does not apply, but you still need to work additional 1 week if you have not worked 6 months continuously full time for 35 hours per week. However, you did not work, let's say you work for 3 months and then you did not work for 1 week because your employer did not have the shifts for you because you're a casual employee, then your 6 months will start again when you start your job again next week. So in that case, you're not allowed to have it. But if you have a medical reason and you have a medical certificate for it, it's completely fine. Then you lodge a matrix. If you're selected, then you get an invitation to apply for a Canberra state nomination. Please keep in mind that Canberra does not allow you to submit any additional documents after you've submitted an application. That means Canberra's requirement is that when you submit an application, a complete application, they consider you to be skilled enough, and that is one of the criteria, that by submitting a complete application, then only we will nominate you. If you make a mistake, you might get a rejection. So there is no additional documents, there is no further request sent by the Canberra government to provide further documents for your application for state nomination. If you have not provided these documents according to the checklist, they will simply refuse your application. Second option is 491, working in Canberra category, where your occupation must be on ACT list. Your work has to be at least 3 months continuously, part-time. Now, this doesn't have to be both of 190 and 491, doesn't have to be in your nominated occupation. Now, for 491, you have to work 3 months part-time continuously, which is 20 hours per week. Again, if you have a gap, you must have either a medical certificate. If you don't have the medical certificate, your 3 months will start again from the day you go back to the work. Again, you lodge in metrics, and if you're selected, then you receive an invitation, and then you lodge the visa. Now, as I mentioned, working in Canberra category does not require a candidate to work in their nominated occupation. That means that even if you're not working in your field, you can still qualify. Next category is a small business category, where you can purchase an existing business or establish a new business. You have to operate the business for 6 months. They say that you have to have a $200,000 turnover over 12 months, calculated pro rata. That becomes 100,000 for 6 months, and you need to have a total 52,000 or more, 54,000 or more salary, which becomes $26,000 salary over the 6 months period, and employ one Australian employee. So you must have one Australian employee working in your field. The 491, again, similar option, that you small business category, you establish a new business or purchase an existing business. Now here you have to operate a business for 3 months. Now $200,000 a year turnover, calculated pro rata, that becomes $50,000 turnover for 3 months and $13,000 salary in that 3 months time. You have to draw your own salary, and you must employ one Australian employee, at least part-time basis. Now, the questions. So we will move to the next part of the questions. Let me go back to the our sessions so that I can check what are the questions asked, and I can answer those questions. So we'll start from the beginning so that we don't miss any of our participants. Thank you very much, guys, for so many questions that we have received in the comment box. The first question that we have is, sorry, I'm just going through the question. So Amandeep Kaur asks that, can we ask the question? Yes, Amandeep, you can ask the questions. Amandeep's question is, I have completed my 1-year experience as an ICT support engineer. Please advise when can apply for an ROI. So if Amandeep, if you're talking about ROI for New South Wales probably will start their ROI process in August. So you can apply for an ROI in August when they open up. So you have to keep an eye on their website. Next question is from Rupali. On 491, upon being granted the visa, must a job be found by a primary applicant and the partner in the same regional area, or is the person only required to live in the regional area? So all the family member, Rupali, has to be living and working in the regional area. It doesn't have to be the same designated regional area, but you have to exclude Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. You cannot live, work, or study. None of your family members can live, work, or study in the regional outside the regional designated regional area. Next question is from Harvinder Sethi. How much points are good for this financial year for 190 in Victoria for IT occupations? See, if your job is now, obviously, we still have to wait for Harvinder for Victoria to announce the nomination criteria. However, from what I see is if your occupation is in IT and if your job is actually, helping in response to COVID for Victoria's COVID response, then yes, definitely your chances even at 80 or 85 points is still good. We have seen people getting an invitation depending on your number of years of experience, depending your job profile, what you do at work, and how your work is impacting Victoria's COVID-19 response. The next question is this session being recorded? Yes, our marketing team probably will respond to your question. Yes, it is being recorded. However, I'm not sure if you can access this. So our team will get back to you on this one in the comment box. The next question is Dinuk. So next question is from Dinuk, which is, I would like to know whether there has been changes to the skills assessment requirement for a 190 through high performing graduate visa pathway for graduates in South Australia, since a general skill migration assessment is required for above, even though work experience isn't required. Yes, so all the 190 and 491, it is the Department of Home Affairs requirement that each candidate applying for a 190 visa must have a positive skills assessment. So that means that the South Australian government will also ask you for a skills assessment, because even if they nominate you without skill assessment, if you get an invite and you lodge the visa, you will not be able to get the visa. So definitely South Australian government will require you to have a skills assessment. And if your skills assessment authority requires you to have a work experience, that means you still need a work experience in your nominated occupation. So yes, M, your question regarding the recording of this session, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and the link has been provided in the comment box, in the chat box here. The next question is from Sheila. For a software director with 18 years of experience, with which subclass can he apply under, and what skill code, and what is the desired point? Would only 70 points be good enough? Now, Sheila, that depends on, yes, 18 years of work experience. That means there will be a lot of options for that person. So the first thing recommended is apply for a skills assessment, have your skills assessment done with ACS as a software engineer or a developer programmer. And once you have a skills assessment, calculate the points. Now, some states, like say, for example, South Australia, even if that person is offshore, they're able to get an invitation. If this person is onshore, then depends on which state that person is living in and whether they meet the state nomination criteria for that particular state. But yes, people with this kind of profiles have a very good chances to apply for a permanent visa. I would also suggest one more thing. If this person is in Australia and if they have a job in their field, if they get a positive skills assessment as a software engineer or a developer programmer, their employer can nominate them for a subclass 186 visa, and that's directly a permanent residency. So if their employer is happy to support, that could be a very good option. Now, the next question is from Harvinder Sethi again. How much points are required, or how much points are good for this financial year for 190 IT occupations? How much points are good for this financial year in IT occupation? How much points are good for, okay. So if Harvinder, I think we have already answered this question. This is a repeat question, so I'll skip that one. Next question is Rahul Gir. So hi, I'm an electrical engineer with 7 years of experience. I'm currently standing at 70 points for 190 visa. How many chances are there for 190 visa approval for me? Education, Masters of Engineering, Bachelors of Engineering, experience 7 years, and singles 29 years old. Now, Rahul, I think if you should try for a higher English language score, if you don't have a superior English, and if you're targeting New South Wales, that also depends on which location are you in? If you're in New South Wales, if you're in overseas, then it depends on your location as well. But if you do have a superior English and if your occupation is open for New South Wales for offshore candidate, if you get a superior English with 7 years of experience, you still stand a good chances. Also, I think 491 in New South Wales as well as 491 in South Australia could be a good option once you complete 8 years in South Australia. I think because they need 8 years of work experience. So if you're about to complete 8 years, you should also consider applying for a 491 in South Australia. But if you're very strict about applying for a 190 only, then you should probably try and increase your points by going for a higher English language score or a CCL exam. And as a part of this session, as you know that there is a giveaway. So if you participate in our in our giveaways, shout out and tag Aussizz and Aussizz Conclave to 2022, then you might win the CCL and PTE tutorials. And if you win that, then you can also use that and then practice, because you will be trained on the PTE and CCL exams, so you can pass those exams easily. So next question is from Yash Joshi. Can my employer sponsor me for after 6 months I worked for them? Field job mechanical engineer. So Yash, minimum sponsorship work experience requirement for a 482 visa as well is 2 years. So you need to have at least 2 years of work experience in your field for a 482 visa. However, if your employer can nominate you for a 407 visa, if you have either a study experience in last 24 months for 12 months, so 12 months study experience in last 24 months, or 12 months of work experience in last 24 months, then you can also apply for a 401 through an employer sponsored category, but that is a training visa. And then later on, you can probably go for a 482 visa. Amit Kulkarni, has the NSW been covered? Yes, NSW has been covered in this session. However, don't worry, you can also register for another session, which is completely dedicated for an NSW nomination, which is, I think, during this next 5 days. So you can register for that session. We will share the links here anyways. Next question is from Fatima. Can MPhil research students apply for the PhD graduate stream in Queensland? Yes, but if you have completed master's degree by research, you will still qualify for only a 491 category, not a 190, not under the PhD graduate, because PhD requires you to have a 4 years doctorate degree. Now, guys, we have only 5 minutes left, so I'll be try to be very quick. Can we apply for a PR through multiple subclasses 189, 190, and 491 family sponsorship? Yes, Sheila, you can choose multiple options, no problem. You can lodge an EOI for 189, you can lodge an EOI for 190, you can lodge an EOI for 491, you can lodge an EOI for 491 state nomination and family sponsorship as well. If someone's visa got rejected in 491, can the same person apply 491 again? Yes, as long as you have not been barred by 4020, which is providing false or misleading information, then yes, you still have an option to apply for a visa again. In case if you did not get the 491 before and you got rejected, you can reapply. That's not a problem, as long as the new visa application that you apply, you are able to prove all the points that you're claiming. Next question is from Sheila again. For 491 family sponsored, can first cousin of the primary applicant's spouse be sponsored? Does the family sponsor the visa have to be citizen or only a PR, and then cannot be living in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane? So yes, if your spouse is included in your application, then their relative is also eligible to sponsor you. So if the primary applicant is a wife and husband's cousin is living in a designated regional area, then still fine. The husband's cousin can still nominate the primary applicant, a wife, to apply for a 491 family sponsorship. But yes, they have to not be living in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. So they have to be living in a designated regional area, which exclude these 3 cities. Next question is from Thilini. If someone's visa got rejected in 190, can they apply for 491 again? Yes, even if your 190 is rejected, you can apply for a 190 or 491 visa again. The next question is from Vishal. Hello, sir. I have questions, but WA is having their own skill occupational list, right? Sorry, Vishal, I didn't understand your question. But if you do have questions about WA, you can join our WA's state nomination program session that will cover specific all the categories in WA's nomination. Sumina, I'm currently living in NSW. I recently graduated in IT. which state will be the best for me. So Sumina, if you are able to get, let's say, English language score, highest English language score, if you're able to find a job in your field, if you do have, if you can get a CCL exam, if you know, and if you can get a proficient English, if you do have all of this, even Sydney is not bad, because eventually, if you get a 485 visa, if you study professionally here, you'll be able to gather more points and apply for NSW nomination as well. Even though in IT occupations, let's say right now there is a 3 years of experience requirement. However, as you grow your work experience, if you have a job, then yes. Otherwise, it depends on individual profile. So each profile, let's say if client one and client two studied the same courses, same university, but their ability to get an English language score changes. Let's say one has an ability to get only proficient English and the other one has an ability to get only superior English, and one can get a job, other one cannot get a job. So on these factors, actually our answers changes. So there is not like, one size fits all. So that's why, we cannot say that this particular state is good for you, but it depends on the particular, um, you know, profile. Now, there are lots of questions I can see, and unfortunately, we have a time limit. So we will definitely get back to your questions. However, we have a next session, which covers the engineering area. So you can definitely participate in our next session as well, which covers on engineers' occupations, including PR pathways and courses as well. So the next session is focused for engineering professionals. That includes options for courses as well as PR. We thank you very much for joining us for today's session and putting so many questions. And I can see you guys have joined in large numbers. We really thank you. And this was a curtain raiser for today's session, or for this conclave 2022. We hope this information that we have provided is helpful, and please join our next sessions and join during this conclave, because there will be a lot of information given by our migration agent, and that's absolutely free. And you can also participate in our giveaways by giving a shout out about the session. And the links is in the chat box right now, and tag Aussizz Group and Aussizz Conclave 2022 to win the exciting offers that we have mentioned previously. We thank you for joining us today, and you have a lovely day. Thank you.